feeling like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place.
Welcome to the National University of Singapore Yong Loo School of Medicine Healthy Longevity webinar. Thank you for joining us. Professor Sachin Panda is joining today, and he will talk about day and night, the circadian rhythm. I would love that we have a very good discussion, so please put all your questions into the Q&A function. It's highly appreciated. We start, as always, with a short presentation, this time by Shara Kapimpin, and she is a research assistant at our Healthy Longevity Translational Research Program. She will present her project about circadian rhythm affects neural stemness.
Thanks for the kind introduction. So, as mentioned, my name is Shara, and I'm a research assistant at the Healthy Longevity TRP NUS. Today, I'll be giving you a little sneak peek on the project I'm working on, circadian rhythm effect on neural stemness. So the loss of cognition is one of the most dreaded aspects of growing old for any individuals, largely because when we lose our mental faculties, we also lose our sense of self. So patients with loss of cognition are also unable to care for themselves and become very reliant on external caretakers. Often, most patients with cognitive impairment also have poor compliance with medications, and this too can pose a problem for other health conditions that they have. As a result, loss of cognition is a major health and social issue and is responsible for about 40% of admissions to institutionalized care, such as nursing homes. So individuals who develop cognitive decline have increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or other neurodegenerative diseases, such as Parkinson's disease or Huntington's disease. One of the most common forms of dementia, and is responsible for more than 70% of these cases, is Alzheimer's disease, in short, AD. So AD is a major cause for concern because of its impact on the healthcare cost, which is estimated to exceed $1 trillion for annual cost by 2050. There is a need to find effective therapeutic treatment that can prevent disease development and/or provide early initiation of effective treatments to delay disease progression. Currently, treatments for AD are designed to target AD pathological features, but these show limited clinical benefit and at most provide symptomatic relief. Moreover, time from progression of AD to discernible symptoms can take decades, and by then, there's already plenty of damage in the brain. So if there is a way for us to target a point before pathology, that might enable prevention of AD progression. There is growing evidence that altered neurogenesis could be a preceding pathology to AD, and interestingly, fluoxetine, an approved FDA drug for depression and anxiety disorders, show promise in clinical studies in improving dementia by enhancing neurogenesis. So adult neurogenesis is the formation of new neurons, and this is important in maintaining cognitive capacities such as learning, memory, and mood stability. It also maintains function and compensates for neuronal loss, such as in the case of injury. So with age, there's a concomitant decline with adult neurogenesis, but mechanisms are still poorly understood. But what most studies have found is that neurogenesis do occur even at a later age, but the rate at which it happens declines modestly. Additionally, neural stem cell population, NSCs, itself declines significantly with age. So the decline in the formation of newborn neurons with AD and other neurodegenerative disease with dementia is more pronounced compared to healthy age-matched controls. So in AD mice models, they also observed an initial hyperproliferation of immature newborn neurons in the younger mouse. But this production of newborn neurons then declines at a later age, raising the possibility that impairment to neurogenesis earlier on could precede AD pathology. So is it possible that the hyperactivity of neurogenesis early in life results in the eventual depletion of neural stem cells? And because now there are fewer neural stem cells, when AD pathology sets in, there's not enough stem cells to generate newborn neurons to replace the damaged ones. So neurogenesis is a multi-step process, but for my project, I would like to focus on the first two steps, maintenance and proliferation of quiescent or dormant NSCs, as well as commitment and differentiation to neuronal phenotype. So neurogenesis can be regulated by many extrinsic and intrinsic factors, but I want to bring your attention to circadian rhythm, which is the internal biological clock. The circadian clock, which have been found to control cell cycle regulators, is able to guide cell cycle progression and dictate the entry and exit of neural stem cells in the cell cycle. Additionally, circadian rhythm regulates cellular metabolism and other signaling pathways, which determines whether NSCs can differentiate to neurons. So even in normal physiological aging, alterations to circadian rhythm have already been observed, but these alterations are seen to be more pronounced in AD. In fact, circadian disruption early on, prior to onset of symptoms, have been observed in patients and suggest that circadian disruption in the form of sleep disturbances could be an early warning sign for AD. So for my project, I intend to determine if the disruption in circadian rhythm in neural stem cells can result in the dysregulation of adult neurogenesis in AD. Hopefully in the next round, I can present you with more findings. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Shara. What wonderful research you are doing and actually highlighting how important the circadian rhythm is. And that brings me to our guest today, Professor Sachin Panda. He is professor in the Regulatory Biology Department at the Salk Institute in California in the US. And he has received multiple awards, including the Julie Marie Mid-Career Award in Aging Research and the Dana Foundation Award in Brain and Immune System Aging. His research focuses on the circadian regulation of behavior, physiology, and metabolism in model organisms, but also in humans. And he discovered something very, very striking. He discovered a blue light sensing cell type in the retina, acting as a master clock, which affects mood and regulates the production of our sleep hormone, which is melatonin. He also discovered that maintaining time-restricted eating can prevent and reverse metabolic health. So it's my pleasure to have you here, Professor Panda, and give you the floor for a short presentation.
Thank you for having me on this webinar. I always think that to live at our peak physical, intellectual, and emotional performance, irrespective of age, gender, health status, or nationality, is a universal human aspiration and also a universal human right. When you think of peak performance, that might mean different for different people or at different life stages. For example, if you're a kid, if you're a child going to school, peak performance means doing well in school so that one day you can be an athlete or you can be an actor or you can be whatever you dream to be. And if you're in 20s or 30s, peak performance means to be healthy and to perform well in your profession so that you have a bright future ahead. And if you're in 40s, peak performance or being healthy means maybe to stay healthy so that you can save money from your healthcare cost and invest that into your kids' future. And if you're an older age, peak performance might mean to be remaining healthy and fit, to be independent of medication so that you can travel around the world or play with your grandkids. But why we cannot live a long, healthy life? What is preventing us? I think there are actually a lot of disease conditions that prevent us from living a long, healthy life. And those can be in 4 different buckets. One is infectious disease. And as recently we all experienced COVID-19, it reminds us that infectious disease can take months or years away from our healthy lifespan. And even some people can lose their life. And then the second bucket is metabolic disease or chronic disease that starts from anywhere from gaining extra bit of weight or being obese to diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, and etc. And now we know that these metabolic diseases can take decades from our life and also productive, healthy life. And then the third bucket is brain health condition. More than half of us actually experience depression, anxiety, or in older age, PTSD, dementia, etc. And these take away years of healthy lifespan. And finally, injuries. As many of us get older, we cannot move, we cannot exercise because we accumulate injuries to our musculoskeletal system, our back injuries, our knee injuries, and that limit us from living a long, healthy life. And in fact, in most industrialized nations, high blood pressure affects nearly 50% of all adults. Pre-diabetes or diabetes can affect up to 50% of all adults. Liver disease are going to affect 3 out of 10 adults. And there are many, so for example, in many industrialized countries, nearly 4 out of 10 adults will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And as I mentioned, nearly 50% of us will experience depression, anxiety, or brain health conditions in our lifetime. Digestive issues also affect nearly half of us. Injuries, as I mentioned, at the age of 60, nearly 50% of adults do have some kind of injuries. And then many people suffer from lung disease that affect their cardiopulmonary health. So then the question is, well, if we want a long longevity plan, then the plan should be so magical that it should simultaneously help us to prevent disease. And even if we fall sick, then it should also help us to accelerate our cure so that we can solve multiple issues by this longevity plan. And then after you're cured, another challenge is to come back to full function. For example, those who have a heart attack, we know that even after a heart attack, it takes a while to come back to full function. So then the question is, do we have a longevity plan, a magic pill, or a healthy habit that can actually do all these four miraculously? Prevent disease, solve multiple health issues, accelerate cure, and quickly return us back to full functionality? And the answer is yes. There is actually a hidden secret inbuilt in all of our DNA. It's built into our DNA blueprint, and that I call circadian rhythm or 24 hours rhythms. So in fact, our body is programmed to go through repair, rejuvenation, and reset every single day. But when we think about circadian rhythm, the first thing that comes to our brain is sleep. And in fact, many of you who were lucky enough to have gone to bed around 10 o'clock last night, then your deepest sleep happened around 2 o'clock. And just before waking up, a couple of hours before waking up, your body prepares to wake up. So just like an automated machine, your body temperature begins to rise. Your breathing accelerates a little bit more. Your heart pumps a little bit faster. And we are ready to wake up. When we get up, get out of our bed, and get exposed to a little bit of bright light, then our sleep hormone melatonin goes down, and our stress hormone cortisol reaches its peak within an hour after waking up. Similarly, our body is programmed to go through bowel movement in the morning. Our peak insulin sensitivity also happens in the first half of the day. Our alertness is much better in the first half of the day, so that's the time to solve complex math or to have difficult negotiations. Late afternoon is the best time for muscle performance, so athletic performance peaks in late afternoon. And as the evening rolls in, again, our body cools down, our sleep hormone melatonin begins to rise, and we go back to sleep. And these 24 hours rhythms is actually the best biomarker of health. Because when we suffer from some disease, then many of these pre-programmed activities in our body gets disrupted. For example, many people may experience disrupted sleep Many people may not have the right bowel movement at the right time, and these are just the earlier sign that something is wrong in our body. The research over the last 50 years has taught us that just like we imagine there is a clock in our brain that makes us to sleep at night so that we can repair, reset, and rejuvenate our brain for a new day. Similarly, almost every cell in every organ in our body has a circadian clock. So that means every organ is also programmed to go through reset, repair, and rejuvenation every single day. And our brain clock acts as a master conductor of all these peripheral clocks, so that the symphony ultimately leads to daily rhythms in physiology, behavior, metabolism, and even our microbes that live in our gut. They also have rhythms. So all these rhythms keep us healthy. And our brain clock is connected to the outside world through light sensors present in our retina. So that when the day length changes from short day in winter to longer day in summer, or when you travel from one time zone to another time zone, the new daylight and sunset time can act through the retina to reset our clocks so that we can adapt to the new time zone or to the new season. In the last 20-25 years, scientists working in circadian rhythm field has also dug deep to figure out what is actually regulated by circadian clock at a molecular and cellular level. Because when we think about health, longevity, medication, or care, it all boils down to function of individual cells, hormones, repair pathway, all of this. So not surprisingly, circadian rhythm seems to function at every single level of health, cellular health, that we know so far. Starting from mitochondria structure and function, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells. And the mitochondria also show circadian rhythm. So that means at certain time of the day, they're primed to produce a lot of energy. And when they produce energy, they get damaged, and they also go through repair at other time of the day. So similarly, many of the processes that we know are linked to healthy longevity are also regulated by circadian rhythms. So these are cellular redox, detoxification of our body, appropriate protein folding so that our enzymes and sensors can work properly. Our immune system also stays healthy because of circadian rhythm. And almost every cell in our body secretes something, whether it's hormones, whether it's some proteins that surrounds and protects the cell, and that seems to be circadian. Even how cells signal each other, talk to each other, that seems to be also circadian. And circadian rhythm also helps us to repair the damaged DNA that we damage during daytime by being exposed to sunlight, or in the gut lining, many food that we eat that can also damage our DNA, that also gets repaired. Finally, cell cycles, when the cells have to divide, that is also determined by circadian rhythm. So that when circadian rhythms don't work well, our cells can divide much faster, or maybe they will not divide at all and become senescent. And finally, our body, our circadian rhythm also determines what type of nutrient we eat and how much energy we extract from the nutrient, and how our body manages nutrient. Then the question is, well, I'm talking about circadian rhythm, but most people know, which is true, that there are three foundations of health: sleep, nutrition, and physical activity. The question is, how are these three connected to circadian rhythms? In fact, circadian clocks tell us when to sleep. It also makes our brain and body to feel hungry only at certain time of the day or evening. And circadian clocks also tell us when to be physically active. So in a way, these three factors are reciprocally connected to circadian clock, and the circadian rhythms are also connected to the outside world by day and night cycle, as I mentioned earlier. So then the question is, if we are built with the circadian rhythm so well, then what is preventing us from having a good circadian rhythm? The fact is, there are modern lifestyles are very disruptive to our circadian clocks. So, for example, nearly 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 adults in industrialized country works in shift work. So that means they stay awake for at least 2 hours or more between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. for at least 50 nights in a year. So that is the definition of shift work disruption of circadian rhythm. And if we think carefully, almost every college student, every high school student is kind of a shift worker. And also many new moms are shift workers. So all this lifestyle disrupts our circadian rhythm. Then even if you are working a 9 to 5 job, in the weekend, if you're staying awake past your usual bedtime for a couple of hours to socialize, then that's also a form of circadian rhythm disruption. And those who are flying over 2 or more time zones within a day for 40 or 50 days in a year, then that chronic jet lag can also disrupt our circadian rhythm. And then finally, second-hand shift work. Spouses of shift workers also try to stay awake and give company to their loved ones, and in that way, they also disrupt our circadian rhythm. And the question is, if all the circadian rhythm disruptions happen, then what are the consequences? And the consequences are actually, if you lose 1 or 2 nights of sleep, it's not a big deal. You might think that you might feel some mood swing, you might feel irritable. And in fact, these affect everybody, starting from babies and children to teenagers to middle-aged and older adults. Losing few nights of sleep just make us this uncomfortable. But if it continues for weeks, months, or years, as among shift workers or as among high school or college students, then the risk for many chronic diseases actually go up. And these risks for disease can go from childhood obesity, autism spectrum disorders, colitis, bipolar disorders, compromised fertility, diabetes, fatty liver disease, or in most severe cases, it can also increase the risk for cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and neurodegenerative disease. And the good thing is, if we can fix or simply follow a few formula, then we can optimize our circadian rhythm. And when we optimize circadian rhythm, then we optimize our immune function so that we are resilient to infectious disease. And having a good circadian rhythm optimizes metabolism and detoxification so that we have reduced risk for chronic disease, starting from obesity, diabetes, all the way to cancer. And having a good circadian rhythm also improves brain function so that we have better emotional and intellectual performance. We reduce our risk for depression and anxiety. And finally, having a good circadian rhythm also helps us to recover from injuries such as back injuries, muscle injuries, joint injuries, because the pathways that actually repair our joints, bones, and ligaments, they're also on a clockwork. And if circadian rhythms are running well, then the recovery from injury also gets faster. And the question is, well, circadian rhythm feels so complicated because every cell has its own clock. And so just like a car has nearly 20,000 parts down to its last screws and bolts, similarly, circadian clock regulates nearly every single gene. That is almost 20,000 genes in our genome. So just like you don't have to learn every single bits of your car, the machines or the electricity, but you just have to follow a few simple rules to drive a car safely, securely, until it runs 200,000 miles. Similarly, we can follow very few simple rules to nurture a good circadian rhythm. So with that, let's begin with light, because light is the strongest influencer of circadian rhythm. And almost 23 years ago, we and 2 other labs co-discovered a new kind of light sensor in our retina. And this is called melanopsin, which is a blue light sensing protein present in only 5,000 neurons in each eye. And these cells are literally hardwired to the master clock in the brain. But it has some interesting property. It needs blue light So that means orange light or candle light cannot activate it as much. And it is sensitive to very bright light. So as a result, our ancestors who did not have access to electricity, in the evening, the candle light or the firelight was not bright enough to activate melanopsin. So as a result, their circadian rhythm at night was pretty robust. The melatonin began to rise in the evening and they slept much better. And during daytime, as our ancestors stepped outside, the bright daylight activated melanopsin. It synchronized our brain clock, reduced depression, increased alertness, and they were happy people. And in modern days, as we are stuck in indoor conditions, in the evening, we do have pretty bright light. And this bright screen, computer screen, or your ThinkPad, iPad, all kinds of rectangular pieces of glowing objects produce a lot of light that activates melanopsin, disrupts circadian rhythm, reduces sleep hormone melatonin, and we have poor sleep. During daytime, we are stuck in classrooms, offices, and living rooms of buildings with very little access to daylight. As a result, this dim light is not strong enough to activate melanopsin. It doesn't improve our mood, so we have foggy brain. So we go from sleepless night at night and then foggy brain during daytime. And if it continues for many days or years, as I mentioned, it can disrupt our brain health and we can be at a high risk for many of the brain conditions. Now the question is, can we have healthy light? Or can we change our lighting to improve our circadian rhythm for better health? And the simple question is, how much light is healthy? So those who are experiencing depression or seasonal affective disorders in higher latitude, then having 5 to 10,000 lux of light for 1 hour is good, and which is equivalent to being outdoor, even on a cloudy day, is enough to give you that 5 to 10,000 lux of light. You don't have to be under direct sunlight. You can be under an umbrella, or you can be under a shade of a tree, and that will give you 10,000 lux. For average people, one should get at least 1,000 lux of light for at least 30 minutes. What is 1,000 lux? If you're eating breakfast next to a large window, within a meter from the large window, during daytime or lunch, for example, then you are getting almost 1,000 lux of light. And in the evening, you should get pretty low light. So that means no visit to the grocery store or the corner store or the drugstore, because in those stores, the lights are super bright to 1,000 lux. Having a 40-watt light bulb in a room is equivalent to giving you less than 20 lux of light, which is good. If you need bright light, then it's better to have table lamps. And also, don't forget to turn on your night shift or night light feature in your phones. In more critical care condition, for example, 1 in 10 babies these days are born as premature babies. And premature babies live in neonatal ICU for many days or weeks. And many NICUs are actually lit 24/7. This is a simple experiment where physicians and NICU specialists found that simulating light and dim light condition in neonatal ICU can accelerate growth of babies, so that these premature babies who are under simulated 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dim light of 20 lux are actually released from hospital healthy 10 to 13 days in advance. So just imagine one premature these days, and 1 day of adult ICU or NICU costs somewhere between $10,000 to $50,000 a day. So we can reduce a lot of healthcare bills. And finally, I'll talk about the food timing. So we talked about how lighting affects our health. And almost 20 years ago, scientists also found when eating at the wrong time can disrupt our circadian rhythm. Just like when your best friend shows up in the middle of the night, he or she may not be your best friend forever. Similarly, even eating a healthy diet in the middle of the night is not healthy anymore, because that disrupts circadian rhythm. So imagine if you are eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner within a short period of time, then when we eat, we usually burn carbs and store some fat. And after our last meal, our long overnight fasting period, we take out the stored carbs and stored fats and we burn them. So this flip-flop between using sugar or carb when we are eating and switching it to stored fat, for example, ketone bodies after long overnight fast, also strengthens our circadian rhythm. So as a result, if we take the same food and spread over a long period of time, then we don't have a strong rhythm. And just imagine the same food eaten within a short period of time can give us stronger rhythm. We may stay healthy, but the same food spread over a long period of time dampens our rhythms. So how can we take all of these and come up with a healthy circadian lifestyle? So irrespective of what time you go to bed, whether it's 10 p.m. at night, 11 or midnight, or even 1 a.m., try to go to bed at a consistent time and be in bed for at least 8 hours. Because when you stay in bed for 8 hours, you're likely to sleep for 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep. That's considered to be healthy for most adults. After waking up, avoid food for at least 1 hour, because that's when our stress hormones are at peak and our melatonin levels haven't gone down. I call it changing of the guards. The night hormones are coming down, day hormones are peaking. It's not actually best time for our body to manage nutrient. And then have a consistent breakfast time. Eat all your food within 8, 9, 10, or maximum 12 hours. Because we should not be eating 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, because that's when our body is again trying to cool down and get into rest mode. And it's not optimal for the body to digest food. And also our body needs to cool down, and eating food close to bedtime warms up our body. And during daytime, don't forget to exercise or take a brisk walk outdoors, so that way you can get your 30 minutes of physical activity and 30 minutes of light. So this approach of eating within a short period of time and light management, etc., has now been used in more than 150 clinical trials in humans, and also has been tested in laboratory animals. And we are seeing that there is promise that this kind of circadian optimum lifestyle can prevent and reverse, and sometimes with drugs, can accelerate cure and management of many different diseases, from obesity to sleep disorder to type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety, liver disease, etc. Take, for example, diabetes. Only in the last few months, we have seen quite a few small-scale clinical trials showing that people with type 2 diabetes, even those who are taking medication, they can try to eat within 8 to 10 hours, and that helps them to further reduce their blood glucose and improve the quality of life. Although I talked about few cases of circadian rhythm and how we can improve our health, what happens when we fall sick? And new research is showing that even what time we take medications can determine whether we recover much faster or slower. For example, people who take pain medication for their joint pain, if those medications are taken late at night, then the pain is much more reduced in the morning. Similarly, there are new studies showing that what time of the day people take their chemo for cancer, or even they do their heart surgeries, or those who take vaccine. For example, most vaccines are more effective if taken in the morning. So it doesn't stop there. As the modern lifestyle involves a lot of different devices, a lot of different internet connected devices, there is also a possibility that we can optimize our circadian rhythm by timing what time, automatically timing what time our lights turn on or lights turn off, even what time your oven, your microwave, your kitchen should be active and inactive. And in future, if we have robots taking care of us, the robots should also be trained on the principles of circadian rhythm so that they can check our rhythms and also deliver our food and medications at the right time. So in a way, we're actually at the very beginning of a new revolution where the bottom line is we designed this modern world without paying attention to circadian rhythm. And now that we're learning the intrinsic power of rhythms, we can redesign our modern world with lifestyle, wearables, devices, and inbuilt environment to support strong circadian rhythms. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What an enlightening talk to really talk about the importance of sleep, but also managing the light to optimize health. A wonderful talk. Let me ask you the first question, and maybe you can do a deep dive into sleep, the sleep quantity and the sleep quality. You really nicely showed that sleep is associated with, I would call them hallmarks of aging, how our proteins are being folded, how we repair our DNA. Is it just that we have to sleep, or does also our sleep quality think about the number of hours we have in deep sleep? Does that matter?
Well, there's still debate about this, but then I think most people don't actually get to sleep enough. So the first thing would be try to be in bed for 8 hours. And then the question is, how do you sleep well? What we're finding is people who actually stop eating 2 to 3 hours before their habitual bedtime, and those who abstain from say alcohol and caffeine in the evening, then they also get much better sleep quality. So number one, try to be in bed. And then second, your sleep, your body prepares for your sleep from noon onwards. And what I mean by that is you should stop caffeine, tea, hot chocolate, cocoa, all of these that keep us awake somewhere between 12 and 2 in the afternoon. And then in the evening, of course, 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, we should stop eating and also dim down our light. And that helps us to get into deeper sleep. Now the question is, well, how much deep sleep we should get and how we are measuring deep sleep. Unfortunately, many of the wearables, they don't accurately tell us how much deep sleep we get. Of course, they tell us qualitatively whether we are getting, say, half an hour or 1 hour or 2 hours. But if we should not lose our sleep worrying about whether I got 30 minutes of deep sleep or 45 minutes of deep sleep. The next thing is most people also sleep with a companion, whether it's another person or in many cases even with a pet. And that also affects your sleep quality because no two people have exactly identical sleep quality, sleep duration, etc. So you have to pay attention to who you are sleeping with. And if you can, actually, if you can afford, the best thing is to sleep alone. In fact, there are many, I also work on architectural buildings, and I was surprised to see that many wealthy people, starting from 1900, in their houses, had 2 separate beds. Husband and wife actually slept separately with 2 separate beds. Or they would sleep on 2 separate mattresses on the same bed. So these are some of the things that we can think of. And also maintain a absolutely dark bedroom, because many people are slightly sensitive to light, and even light coming from indicators from even bed lamp, side table lamp, and even wall clock sometimes, or digital clocks, can give you poor quality sleep. Finally, sound, noise pollution is a big thing in many people who are living inside city. So having a good pair of earplugs also gives you good quality sleep.
Okay, there's lots to disentangle, I think. Before you choose your partner, please do a pairing if you're sleeping together well. That's what I'm hearing. If I look at nature, lots of animals are sleeping together, maybe because it's cold outside. But can you a little bit elaborate on that? Do they also have poor sleep?
Yeah, so the cooler temperature actually improves your sleep because our body needs cooler temperature to sleep well. So having for example, in the US, typically the rule of thumb is your room temperature should be below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and maybe you can translate that in centigrade. Yes, many animals do sleep together, and it doesn't mean that they're actually sleeping the best quality of sleep. Uh, what happens in nature doesn't mean that increases our longevity. For example, almost every animal you can think of, their lifespan is much longer in a zoo, in a care facility, than in the wild. But in fact, in many zoos, animals don't have partners, unfortunately. So we don't have to think that whatever happens in the nature is best for us sometimes.
Yeah, but we also do not know what kind of social stress that gives. But anyway, let's go a little bit to chronotypes. That keyword exists, I think, since a decades. There are people who are loving to come to work very early. Some people really thrive at night, in the evening. What do we know about not only habits, but also when people functioning most, at least in their brain function, doing work, productivity of different people, and the sleep cycle?
Yeah, so let's dial back and say, okay, so if we go to populations who have no access to electricity, they don't have to actually go show up for work at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, or they don't have to sign up to any shift work. What happens, right? Do we see chronotypes? Unfortunately, no. There is no change, late night chronotype or early chronotype. In fact, multiple studies on this people who have no access to electricity show that people typically wake up around dawn. So now the question is, well, if you think of modern days, people who are actually waking up around dawn, or say twilight zone, which can be 45 minutes to an hour before sunrise, we typically call them the early birds, but actually they're waking up at the right time when you're programmed to wake up. The very few people who are actually what we call familial advanced sleep phase syndrome, these people go to bed before 8 p.m. If sun sets at 6 p.m., then they're actually going to bed within 2 to 3 hours after sunset, and they wake up sometimes 2 to 3 hours before sunrise. So that means they're waking up 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So there are very few people, less than 1 in 150, who have this familial advanced sleep phase syndrome. And that's because of some mutations, some genes that are changing, and those genes relate to circadian clock change. But as you mentioned, most people actually tend to wake up a little later in the morning, and they feel that they're more active and they're more productive in the evening. Let's dissect that a little bit more. Usually these are the people who actually have, it's a self-reinforcing habit, because they're more likely to consume a lot of coffee, a lot of stimulants during the day, because they find it very difficult to wake up early in the morning. And since caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours for an average person, in some cases can be 8 to 10 hours, they're actually, by the time caffeine kicks in and they're feeling more energetic and their sleep pressure has gone down, it's almost late afternoon, and then they can function much better in the evening. So now there is a nice study done where the scientists took the self-described night owls on camping trip without much electricity in the evening and without too much caffeine. And what he discovered was all of these self-described night owls became normal. They would go to sleep before 10 o'clock at night, and they woke up exactly around dawn. So before we think that we are different chronotype and it's in our genes, one thing I always ask people to do is do a 1 week of no caffeine and dim evening light and see what is your chronotype. And that's your true chronotype. And I would bet that nearly 90 out of 100 people who claim to be night owls, they will figure out that they are actually normal. me, I was thinking that I'm a late night guy because I never went to bed before 2 o'clock during my PhD. And then after PhD, when I stopped drinking 5 Diet Coke in a day, then I became normal.
Okay, thank you so much. Really, that I'm realizing now that maybe I could also work pretty well in the morning. Okay, but maybe let's shift a little bit to another very important topic, and that's the microbiome. So the 2 kilogram of viruses and bacteria we have with us. So you just stated very, very shortly in your presentation that our brain rhythm, our circadian rhythm, is actually influencing them. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if you just think about microbes in our gut, they thrive on the gut environment. And so that means when we eat, there are a lot of microbes, they love to chow on whatever we eat. And then when we don't have food in our system for several hours, our gut pH changes, and then our temperature in the gut changes. There are many changes that happen in the gut. So as a result, a different set of microbes will thrive when we fast. So it's not surprising that if we, in mice and also in humans, people have done this experiment. They take out small sample of our gut microbe or fecal microbes at different time of the day, and they find that there are different microbes at different time of the day. So now, what does it mean? Microbiologists and gut microbe specialists always tell us that the more types of microbes you have in your gut, it's better for you, because most of the things that we eat, we actually digest half of it, and our gut microbe process the other half of it, and we produce some enzymes, they produce some enzymes, we produce some things, and they produce some peptides that act on the brain. So if you have more different types of microbes, then it's better for us. Having a strong circadian rhythm increases the diversity, because when we eat, we support a different set of microbes, and when we go through long period of fasting, we also support a completely different set of microbes. So as a result, our total diversity throughout day and night changes. And in fact, what we have seen is in what is called time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting in mice, the microbial diversity increases by supporting some microbes during daytime, supporting another set of microbes at nighttime. And this microbial diversity helps, at least in mice, to clear some of the cholesterol from our body by breaking them down into bile acids in liver. And those bile acids are modified by gut microbes to become a slightly different type, so that these bile acids are not reabsorbed but are excreted in the stool. So as in a way, having strong circadian rhythm improves the gut microbes that helps to secrete some of the cholesterol in the form of bile, thereby reducing cholesterol in our plasma.
Okay.
That's just one example, and
Yeah.
there are many more examples.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sometimes we also need our gut microbiome to sleep, I would say,
Yes.
and how we influence it. If you talked about the light revolution. So if you would be the architect of cities and you were allowed by the governments to just make one change, and maybe a major change, what would you do? Would you switch off the lights from 6 p.m. onwards?
No, actually, we are living at our golden age of lighting, because for the first time in human history, we can control the spectral quality, the color of the light, the brightness of the light, and also duration of light. Of course, we can remotely change. So just imagine now, in public lighting, the street lighting should be directed towards the street, and there should not be light pollution going to people's apartments and windows. So there are engineering solutions that are already there. Then spectral tuning can be done in public places, so that the color of the light goes from blue enriched, blue LED, to slightly orange color as if it's in candlelight. Mm-hmm. And in public places, at least, those are controlled by government entities, there can be light layering. For example, we need light on the street so that we can find the road. We don't actually need light illuminating our whole body and our headspace. So we can have light layering that also helps. We can have sensors on the highways so that only when there are pedestrians, just like we have motion sensing light at home, why can't we have motion sensing light in our cities and roads so that we don't unnecessarily turn on a lot of lights when we don't need them? And lighting is not only important for us, light at night also confuses many insects, birds, migrating species, so that they get confused whether they're in a sunny summer days or they actually should be going elsewhere. So there is also a lot of debate to reduce light pollution and change spectral qualities so that we can also take care of our environment. In fact, I do work with architects and different entities that set the guidelines for lighting and help them with the science of lighting to come up with better lighting design.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important to also take the other species into account who are exposed to what we do in terms of lighting. Before going to Andrew, who is has lots of questions, what I see already from the audience. Lots of our followers are traveling through time zones, including me. Do you have an advice?
Yeah, so one thing is when we travel through flight and take a flight, our obvious reaction is we get on the flight, eat a lot of food, watch a lot of TV, and then we reach at our destination and we are sleepy. For most part, if your flight is leaving late afternoon and you are reaching your destination early morning, then the only thing you should be doing in flight is sleep. So eat all your food in the airport. Of course, the airport food is still better than the airline food in flight in some cases. And in flight, just try to sleep the entire flight. Then, second thing is if you're flying in the morning and flying throughout the day, the worst thing they can do is wake up very early in the morning and eat food, because that disrupts your circadian rhythm. So you can leave your home, and since you have lost some sleep, it's better to not drink coffee in the morning so that you can catch up with your lost sleep in flight. And then when you reach the new destination, you can get adjusted. At the new destination, one thing that everybody can do is try to wake up early in the morning, go outdoor, take a walk, even for 15 minutes, because that bright morning light will reset your brain clock to the local time. And then if you have a breakfast, that also resets your gut clock or your body clock to the local time. And that's, I think, is the best way to readjust to the new time zone. Both experimental studies in animals and also anecdata, because we cannot do these experiments well in humans, are showing that that's the best way to adjust to new time zones.
Thank you so much. Andrew, what are the questions for today?
Thank you, Prof. Andrea, for the introduction. I will start with a few questions. Maybe I will combine some of the related questions. So to Professor Pender, I would like to ask, how does age influence circadian rhythms and the adaptability of the various cell types to circadian rhythms, and specifically about circadian rhythm of sleep? What strategies can be employed to ensure quality of sleep as we grow older?
Yeah, so as children hit puberty, then their circadian rhythm actually becomes more sensitive to light, or maybe the rhythm changes in a way that middle school and high school students, also college students, are more likely to stay awake past midnight and get up late in the morning after 6 or 7 o'clock. So unfortunately, there is not much solution other than turning up or dimming down light at night, but which is not a solution. So as a result, what has happened is there are many countries, many states that are delaying the middle school start time or high school start time beyond 8:30 in the morning. So that's one example of how understanding circadian rhythm changes during puberty has led to public policy changes. Now, throughout our adult life, we kind of stay with the similar circadian rhythm, but again, after menopause, or equivalent is 50 to 55 years of age in males, our rhythms become more early chronotype. So that means you are more likely to fall asleep earlier in the evening before say 10 or 11 at night, and also wake up a little bit earlier. But another important change that happens is as we get older, our arousal threshold goes down. So that means little disturbances, whether it's sound, whether it's light, whether it's somebody else rolling in the bed or somebody else snoring in the room, can wake us up. So as a result, as we get older, we have to be more careful about maintaining a quiet, dark, and cooler environment to get good night's sleep. The other thing that happens as we get older is if we lose sleep for 2 to 3 hours, if you're young, you will feel sleepy the next day, you'll catch up your sleep. But as our brain gets older, our brain doesn't register the lost sleep. So if we sleep less one night, we don't overcompensate the other nights. So as a result, as we get older, if we sleep less in one night, we have to take the initiative to be in bed for longer time the next day. So these are some of the changes we have to adopt as we go from puberty, older adults to very old.
Thank you, Professor Panda, for the insight. So related to that would be some questions from the audience. So one audience member asked whether should office building be considered using a suitable light for like indoor daylight, and whether it should be adjusted to accordingly into the evening to assist in circadian rhythm alignment, and whether there are any studies that compare the two between artificial light and sunlight.
Yeah, there are many small-scale studies showing that increasing daytime brightness inside office actually improves alertness and productivity. Unfortunately, what happens is the same bright light remains bright until the evening, and those who are leaving office a little bit later in the evening, that bright light is not actually ideal for them. So what is the solution? The solution can be you can have personal devices. So for example, you can have blue light filtering eyeglasses, which look a little bit funky orange color. Maybe late in the evening, if you're working and if you have to come home and try to sleep, then it's better to either dim down your light if you can. If not, you can use some blue filtering glasses so that you can have a good night's sleep.
Thank you, Professor Panda. The next question that I would like to ask is, are there any pharmacological ways to realign our circadian rhythm, or are there any other drugs like anti-aging drugs that could affect circadian rhythm?
Yeah, so nowadays there are many research going on to see whether there are supplements or drugs that can act on circadian clock. And in fact, there are quite a few drug-like molecules tested in mice and laboratory animals showing that these drugs that activate or suppress clock components, thereby improve circadian rhythm, are actually very effective in treating dementia, treating liver disease, treating different types of cancer in laboratory conditions. So that's why these drugs are now going to clinical, hopefully they will go to clinical trials for these conditions. Now for everybody, people always ask, can they take melatonin in the evening? Because as we get older, or if we're exposed to too much light, then our body doesn't produce enough melatonin. For many people, it does help, but I would suggest that you should try to titrate your melatonin. Start with very small dose and see if it works, and then try to go higher. And another thing is there is new science showing that melatonin too close to your dinner time actually affects how your body handles sugar. So that's why if you're trying to take melatonin, that should be also at least a couple of hours after your dinner time.
Thank you, Professor Panda. Perhaps the next question that I would like to ask is, can paying back sleep debt help to realign our circadian rhythm after a few late nights?
Yeah, I mean, if you're staying up for 2 extra hours beyond your usual bedtime, you're essentially traveling 2 time zones. So it'll take you 2 to 3 days to readjust your circadian rhythm. And part of that readjustment would involve sleeping those few lost hours of sleep and also going back to your regular schedule of sleep.
Okay, thank you once again, Professor Pender. The next question that I would like to ask is, are there any examples for how epigenetics regulate the human circadian rhythm?
Yeah, so there are studies done in mice showing that if young newborn mice and young pups are exposed to continuous light, then that continuous light changes the brain circadian rhythm by changing the epigenetics, the master circadian clock, so that these mice actually have a very different rhythm for the rest of their life. Now, we also know that human studies have shown that babies who have a regular sleep time, they're much better protected against childhood obesity and few other brain disorders than babies who are actually put to sleep on different time on different days. So their circadian rhythm is disturbed. And this effect remains for a very long time. These babies are more likely to gain weight and have some metabolic disease, which can only be explained by potential epigenetic change due to disrupted or irregular sleep time when they were babies. So these are some of the evidence and some data that support that disrupted sleep time or excessive exposure to nighttime light when we are babies or animals or pups can have adverse effect for the rest of the life.
So perhaps I'd like to ask this question from the audience. For those living in countries like Norway or Iceland, where sunlight can only last for 1 or 2 hours in winter or as long as 20 plus hours in summer, do they have a more adaptive circadian rhythm that changes across the year?
Unfortunately, the circadian rhythm doesn't adjust that quickly. And in fact, as we go from equator to northern latitude, the rate of depression, anxiety, and also the rate of suicide goes up. And the rate also goes up from winter to springtime. So which suggests that we don't, even living there lifelong doesn't help us adapt. So that's why it's not surprising that the northern latitudes has produced many famous circadian rhythm researchers, because they try to figure out what is the optimum lighting and darkness to live in such extreme conditions.
Thank you so much for this very enlightening talk. At least I have two conclusions. Choose your partner based on your sleeping type, that you can sleep together. And the chronotype is being made up. Is that right?
I won't say made up, it's overused. We should not blame our chronotype, but we should investigate our chronotype. Are we really what we believe, or are we really due to our habits?
Okay, thank you so much for this enlightening talk. It was absolutely marvelous. So thank you so much for coming. I think you also enjoyed, as our followers, this nice conversation. Please use the chat function to leave your comments and your feedback. We have a very exciting educational program coming up in February. The NUS Academy for Healthy Longevity is hosting the intensive course from the 26th to the 28th of February. And then thereafter, during the same week, we have the Unlock Healthy Longevity Supplements Conference from the 29th of February to the 1st of March 2024. And this conference is the first global conference solely focused on supplements and how we can use that to optimize our health. If you are coming, you will be joined by scientists, clinicians, industry partners, lots of consumer representatives. So please explore if you would like to come to NUS in February 2024. The next guest I'm hosting on the 14th of December 2023, so this year, is Professor Philippe Pecourt of Chile from the Center for Integrative Biology. I will leave you, as always, with one video, and I could summarize it as race at all ages. Take care.
All right. 70 and over is next on the blocks, guys. And we have a pretty full field, it looks like. It's like we have 6 athletes on the track, and we are in the blocks ready to rock here, Ryan.
Joaquim Olasque. We got Don Warren, Michael Kish, Rick Hansen, Dan Williams, and Steve Conway. They're in a set position. Guns off.
We are off. Here we go. Out of in the middle of the track, rolling right now.
Looks like it might be Michael Kish.
Mr. Kish.
Shore AC's Michael Kish, 13:47, so even faster than our 65-year-old age division. That is unbelievable.
I'm feeling like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down.